This is Uganda, a country on the equator with glaciers on its peaks, and a swamp bird that looks like a living dinosaur. And a tiny island here, where families once rode their own daughters out to die. They call Uganda the Pearl of Africa, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly why. Starting from fact number 30, Uganda is landlocked, no ocean, no coastline, not a single beach touching the sea, and yet almost a fifth of the entire country is water. Lakes, rivers, swamps, everywhere. So you've got a nation with no sea access that's somehow drowning in fresh water. They call it the Pearl of Africa. And once you see how much of it shimmers, you get why. Fact 29. Let's talk about the big one, Lake Victoria. It's the largest lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake on the entire planet, covering nearly 69,000 square kilometers across Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Over 40 million people depend on it. But here's the part nobody mentions. The water in Lake Victoria takes about 23 years to fully cycle through. Rain falls in, evaporation pulls it out, and it just sits there. This massive inland sea, barely moving. Fact 28. In the 1950s, someone introduced Nile perch fish into Lake Victoria. The idea seemed reasonable, a big, commercially valuable fish for a big lake. What followed was an ecological catastrophe. The Nile perch had no natural predators, so it just ate and ate. Over 200 species of cichlid fish found nowhere else on Earth were driven to extinction, making it one of the worst freshwater biological invasions in recorded history. Fact 27. This one is insane. Uganda's Murchison Falls is often called the most powerful waterfall on Earth. The whole Nile River gets squeezed through a gap in the rock just 7 meters wide, about the length of a school bus. Around 300 tons of water blast through every second, then crash 43 meters into a pool the locals call the Devil's Cauldron. You can hear the roar for kilometers. Fact 26. Uganda has one of the lowest carbon footprints on the planet, roughly 0.1 tons of CO2 per person each year. Uganda sits far below the global average of around 4.6 tons. Unlike many developing nations that rely heavily on coal or diesel generators for grid power, Uganda boasts an exceptionally green electricity sector. Roughly 90% of Uganda's grid electricity is generated from renewable hydropower. Fact 25. Uganda sits right on the equator. The line passes through a place called Kayabwe, 72 kilometers south of the capital. Here's the fun part. Guides pour water into a bowl with a leaf in it. Step north, the water spins one way. Step south, it spins the other way. Right on the line, it just goes straight down. The science says this trick shouldn't work, but it is definitely so cool to watch. Fact 24. Even though Uganda sits on the equator, it's not super hot. Most of the country is high up, around 900 to 1,500 meters above the sea. That height keeps things cool. The weather stays mild, the soil stays rich, and long ago, Winston Churchill called the whole place end to end one beautiful garden. A garden on the equator, kept cool by how high it sits. Fact 23. Okay, here's where it gets weird in the best way. Uganda has glaciers. Real ones. The Rwenzori Mountains in the west, the legendary Mountains of the Moon, hold permanent ice and snow, and they're only about 40 kilometers north of the equator. The peaks freeze at minus 15 degrees, while the jungle at the base is warm and humid. It's one of the few places in Africa with equatorial glaciers, and the views up there are unreal. Fact 22. And inside those same mountains is Margarita Peak, sitting at 5,109 meters, shared by both Uganda and the DR Congo. That makes it the third highest point in all of Africa, behind only Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya. But unlike Kilimanjaro, which you can basically walk up, summiting Margarita is proper mountaineering. Crampons, ice axes, ropes across glaciers, on the equator, in Africa. People don't believe me when I say it. Fact 21. I have to be real with you. This one hurts. Uganda's glaciers are dying. Since 1906, the Rwenzori has lost more than 80% of its ice. Old photos from 100 years ago show the ice sitting hundreds of feet higher than it does today. And scientists say the rest could be gone in just 10 to 15 years. So if you ever want to see glaciers on the equator, the clock is ticking. Fact 20. Uganda is home to about half of all the mountain gorillas left on Earth. There are just over 1,000 of them left in the wild, and a huge number live in one forest, Bwindi Impenetrable National Park. The forest is so dense, so tangled with vines, that you have to hack your way through it to find them. It's one of the only places on Earth you can sit a few meters from a wild silverback. Fact 19. Uganda is a paradise for birds, and the numbers prove it. Over 1,000 bird species live here. That's nearly half of all the birds in Africa, packed into a country smaller than the state of Oregon. The star is the shoebill stork, a huge, prehistoric-looking bird with a bill like a giant clog, standing dead still in the swamps. It looks like a dinosaur that forgot to go extinct. Fact 18. Here's a record nobody talks about. Lake Victoria is one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world. It has one of the highest drowning rates on Earth, and thousands of fishermen and travelers die on it every year. Storms blow up out of nowhere. The boats are small and